So I want to talk this morning about two things, a little bit on the Parsha and a little bit also on Pesach Sheni, which is this Monday. As you can see, I mean, the background is different. I mean, this very nice hotel in Sydney, Australia. Outside my outdoor is a guard. I came out to take the garbage or to pick up something that was delivered. I didn't have my mask on. He came running. I have to put on the mask. There's 24/7. There's a guard here. It's not a joke. And there's people on this floor that are also quarantined, we cannot speak to each other across the hallway. If you want to talk, then use the phones. In prison, prisoners can talk between one cell and another. Here you can't. It's not a joke. We were escorted with the military and with police who run this hotel and the military to ensure that there is no spread of COVID. What can I tell you? Interesting. Okay, friends. We'll talk more about it at 8 o'clock tonight, your time. In my Friday at 5 is now Thursday at 8. Okay. So something a little bit on the Parsha. So this week's Parsha, friends, we have, everybody knows, the Pasuk says, V'yahavta l'recha kamoicha, you shall love your fellow as you love yourself. So Rashi brings, Omar Rabbi Akiva said, Zeh klal godel b'Torah, this is the great principle of the Torah. Couple of questions. First question is this. Question on Rashi. Rashi's mandate is to explain the meaning of the pasuk of the verse. If the meaning of the pasuk at the simple level is understood, there's no commentary. Rashi does not just 1 second. Rashi is not just collecting commentaries from the Medrash or from the Gemara. He's always answering a question. So the question is, what's the question here? The words are very clear. You should love your fellow as you love yourself. So why is there a need for Rashi to comment? The answer is because there are two big questions on this verse. Two big questions that require an explanation. And by telling us that Rabbi Akiva said, Zeh klal, this is the great principle of the Torah, we have the answer. What are the two questions? The first question is, if we're to take this literally, love your fellows yourself, then there's so many commandments in the Torah that don't have to be said. Do you have to tell someone therefore not to kill? You have to tell someone not to steal, not to embarrass, not to gossip? If we take this literally, that this is a specific individual commandment, then it already implies so many of the other mitzvahs that the Torah has to spell out. So therefore it cannot be understood as what? As a specific commandment. And that's one question, by the way. We'll soon get to the answer. And the second question is, as the Ramban says, it's not possible. You can't love somebody else as you love yourself. Self-love is part of human nature. Now, a parent will love a child even more because the child is an extension of me. That's really self-love. And in marriage, you could say also, two people becoming one, you can love the other person like yourself and even more, but they're also because you became one. But l'rayecha every Yid, how is the Torah demanding such a thing when it's not humanly possible? So these two questions. Number one, if we take it literally, you don't have to say many other commandments. And number two, how can we even take it literally? What does it mean? So this compels Rashi to say it should not be understood as a specific commandment. It's an overarching klal. It's a principle, not a specific directive. It's a principle. And like a principle has many details, many applications, the principle itself is not an applicable thing. It's a general idea. So too, all of the mitzvahs are the details of this general principle. So what's saying is like this. How do you fulfill, so that answers both questions. If this is a commandment, you don't have to say many other things. The answer is it's not a commandment. It's a general goal or objective. And number two, it answers the second question. The Torah is not asking you to love your fellows, you love yourself with a feeling. It's a general idea. It means if you do all the things the Torah says, they'll all add up to loving your fellow. It's the details that are the actual commandments. Don't steal, don't kill, don't embarrass, etc. You behave this way, that means love your fellows yourself. It's a behavior. The commandments is in the behavior. And if you behave, which is written everywhere else in the Torah, all the details, if you behave all these ways, this will all add up and fulfill the overarching principle, which is an idea, but not a commandment. Love your fellows yourself. We're clear? So Rashi is saying, don't understand it as one of the 613 mitzvahs. It's not a commandment. It's not telling you to do anything. It's saying, if you keep all of the other ones, this is loving your fellow as you love yourself. We mean this on a behavioral level. On a behavioral level. And it's the great principle of the Torah, which is why it appears in the middle of the Torah. You'd think a principle would be at the beginning, and then you follow with the details. That's a normal klal. But a klal gadol, the great principle, it's put mamish in the center, Sefer Vayikra, and it encompasses all many mitzvahs said before, and many mitzvahs still to come. They all add up to, this is what we mean by love your fellows, you love yourself. Behave in a loving way. We're not asking to actually feel it. It isn't a specific commandment. Are we clear on the answer? It's not a specific commandment. It's a klal gadol. And Rashi adds even further, who said that Rabbi Akiva? Why do you have to know who said it? Rashi often, when Rashi brings explanations, he doesn't bring the sources. And if he does bring a source, because the source adds to what he's saying. Because all of his explanations are taken from the Medrash or the Gemara. Why does he tell us Rabbi Akiva said it? Because Rabbi Akiva is the one that said, it's the famous argument, if a person's in a desert and there's one container of water and not enough for both of them, so what do? So the other sage says, each one should take a half, and that's it. But one should take, the other one should die. No. And Rabbi Akiva says, Chayecha koidmin. The law is that your life comes first, and if you're the first one to come across it, then you drink the water. In other words, Rashi is telling us, Rabbi Akiva says this because we're here talking about the practicalities. If it was love your fellows, you love yourself, and that was meant in this feeling, like a parent and a child, then the other person should take it. Like a parent and a child, it's an obvious thing. If it's only enough water for one person, you give it to your kid. Because you love your child like you love yourself literally. But Rabbi Akiva is saying, no, it's a practical thing. And a practical thing, when it comes to the practicality, if there's only enough water for one, then you will take it. So this is not to be understood as a practical commandment. Have this feeling. We're talking about a general idea which is arrived at and fulfilled in the fulfillment of the behavior. So what's the lesson? What's the message here is, it's not so much what you feel, but the way you behave. That's the critical thing when it comes to your fellow Jew. And mind you, with the Eibishter as well. Loving Hashem. Love God. Love God. Similar principle. You do what Hashem asks you to do. Do the mitzvahs. That all adds up to a loving relationship. Okay. I want to add something else here. Sure. All right.
You wanted on Pesach Sheni something.
Yeah, Pesach Sheni. Yeah, before I get to that, on we have to Acharei-Kedoshim. It's kind of related. Here's the question. Tzedakah, we all know, is one of the most important mitzvahs. Why isn't there a bracha before you give tzedakah? Before you give tzedakah, should be a bracha. Shekdesham tzveitzah tzivon l'hafrish tzedakah. So everyone said it's I think a Polish word. If the Torah would say that before you give tzedakah, you have to make a bracha, this is what's going to happen. Someone comes knocking at your door, they're starving. They need bread, they need food. Oh, so the Yid now is going to be behind the mitzvah. Wait a second. You have to have the right kavanah. I have to have the right feeling before I give it to you. First I have to go to the mikveh, and he's going to come back from the mikveh, and he's going to think and say the bracha with the kavanah, his whole heart. And meanwhile, the person faints, or God forbid, even worse. The Torah says, forget your feelings and your kavanahs. Give him the dollar. Put the bread in his hand. Same idea. The Torah says, love your fellow as you Jew, as yourself. Says Rashi, what does it mean? That's a klal. How do you do it? They do it in the principles. Do the right thing. That's the bottom line. And never mind your feelings. That is secondary, or maybe not even as important, not even critical at all. And as we said before, your fellow Jew, you cannot love like yourself, but you can certainly behave in the way Torah wants us to. Clear? Okay. Pesach Sheni. I just saw, so what's the story of Pesach Sheni this Monday? So the story of Pesach Sheni is that the Yidden were in the desert. This is the first anniversary of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And they told the mitzvah to celebrate Pesach and eat the korban. Eat the korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb. In order to do that, they have to be what? You have to be Torah. So there were people that were Tomei. And they came to the Moshe Rabbeinu, Anachnu Tomei Nefesh Adam. We are Tomei, Lomba Nigor, it's not fair. Why can we not bring the korban? So the end of the story is that Hashem tells Moshe, okay, we're adding a new law, and that is if someone didn't bring the korban the first time around because he was Tomei, even intentionally didn't bring the korban, there's a second chance exactly a month later, Pesach Sheni, which is this Monday, and you can bring the korban. So there's many questions of the whole story. I just read a few minutes ago. I think it's from one of the Belzer episodes, I don't remember. A Moedic explanation here. He asked the famous question. He said, what are they coming with a complaint? It's not fair. You yourself gave the reason. You're Tomei. What's the time? What's the complaint? So he says like this. The Gemara says 3 opinions why they were Tomei. One says they were carrying the remains of Yosef. Another opinion, there's 3 opinions in the Braisa. Another opinion is that they took out Mishol and El-Tzofan, the sons of Aaron, who had died on the day the Mishkan was inaugurated, the Chodesh Nisan. And a third view is someone had died and there was a mes mitzvah, and this was the 7th day of the impurity. Now, according to the first 2 views, what are they dealing with? Dealing with Yosef. First view is carrying Yosef HaTzadik. And the second view is the sons of Aaron. Nadav and Avihu died. It was as Mishol and Tzaf and the other 2 sons that were Tomei. So you know what the taina is? The taina is these are tzaddikim, and tzaddikim don't make you Tomei. And he's of the opinion, and he brings so many sources there, that a kohen and no one becomes Tomei going to the grave of a tzaddik. The third opinion, there was just someone that had died. Okay, so that was they were actually Tomei. Their argument is we should be able to bring the korban because we are carrying a tzaddik, and a tzaddik doesn't make Tomei. You know what he says? They taka did. They brought the korban that night. Pesach Sheni was instituted thanks to them for anybody else in the future, but not for them. And then he asks, again, it's a few sources, I look at it quickly, why doesn't the Torah say that they actually brought it? Listen to what his answer is. The Torah says that these people, Moshe Rabbeinu said, you're right. That's why he adds another thing, by the way. They said like this, Anachnu tmeim nefesh adam. Nefesh adam, Anachnu tmeim, we're Tomei. If you want to say a person, a nefesh, a person, Why the nefesh adam? Because we know when the Torah uses the word adam, it means the highest level of a person. Atim Kurim Adam. Only Yidna called Adam, and it's the highest level, Adam El Elyon, similar to the one above. So we're Tommy to Nefesh Adam, we're not Tommy. And the Taka brought the korban that night, was out of Pesach. So why doesn't the Torah say so? Because he says like this, if the Torah is going to say, yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to say, you're right, that tzaddikim, and you can bring the korban, and that a tzaddik doesn't contaminate, this is going to cause arguments in the future. Because this one will say he's not a tzaddik, he davens after this man. He's not tzaddik, he does this. Who's going to decide who's a tzaddik? The Torah says, therefore, didn't reveal that Moshe Rabbeinu said, you're right, bring the korban. Because in the future, there'll be those that argue on real tzaddikim that they're not. So the Torah simply doesn't. Incredible answer. The Torah doesn't tell us what happened that they brought the korban, and to avoid the whole subject, because people, who's going to judge who is not? If you know, you know, and real tzaddik knows. But just to avoid the arguments of others, the Torah doesn't say it, and say everybody brings Pesach Sheni. So this is a meridic thing, and going to the oil and to any tzaddik. So the fact is, the Rebbe instructed the oil of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, to make, as you see there, if you go to the oil, there is a fence around the grave, like a little brick fence. And likewise, going there, so all Koyanim can go. Again, this is to avoid any debate. Yeah, no, it's 100% kosher. Any Yid can go and stand close because there was a partition. Even a Kohen can go. But in principle, it brings sources at tzaddik, even when he's dead, the body does not convey impurity. The body is pure. Okay, so now an important lesson for us about Pesach Sheni. So if you look at the laws, the difference between the first Pesach and the second Pesach are interesting. The first Pesach is 7 days. Second Pesach is 1 day. The first Pesach, no chametz, zero tolerance for chametz. Second Pesach, the person doesn't have to renounce chametz, as the Mishnah says, chametz and matzah imay baboyes. He has with him chametz and matzah in the house. Why this difference? And another question. Why is Pesach Sheni in the month of Iyar? Why didn't they get the next chance 2 weeks later? It doesn't. They were told it takes only another week to become pure. Why is it a whole month later you get the second opportunity? Exactly a month later. You would think it should still be in the month of Yetzias Mitzrayim. You couldn't do it on the first Pesach, so you give you 2 weeks later, you can do it still within the month. Why is it the second? Why is it the month of Iyar? The answer is that is as follows. What's Pesach Sheni? Pesach Sheni represents the power of Teshuvah. The power of Teshuvah. And the power of Teshuvah is such that nothing stands in its way. Yidden came at the simple level. You would have thought Moshe Rabbeinu would have said to them, listen, at the simple level, listen, my friends, this is the halacha. A person's tomei doesn't bring the korban. Next year you should be well. Next year you'll bring it. And yet it's not what happened. Moshe Rabbeinu responds to them, and Hashem comes back with a whole new law. Because what's the message? The message is, if a Yid comes really banging, as it were, on heaven's gate, and he says, Lama Nigoda, I want to be part of this, I want to be connected, notwithstanding what happened to me, what I did, then Hashem opens up entirely new channels that were never, not there before. Not even in the Torah were they there before. Nothing stands in the way of tshuva, no matter what I did in the past, deliberate or not deliberate. So Pesach Sheni is the power of Teshuvah, and therefore it's one day. Pesach, first Pesach is 7 days. Second Pesach is only 1 day. Why? 7 days represents the cycle of time. It's the whole cycle of time. The first Pesach represents the tzaddik. What's the first Pesach? It's the birth of our people. A child is born innocent and pure. And in the beginning, things were the Yidden till the Chet HaEgel, but it started off like we all do in life, innocent and pure. A tzaddik, friends, is predictable. You look at him, you can be sure he's going to be tomorrow, the next day. He grows steadily, like time. One day, a second day, and it repeats, the cycle repeats again. It's a predictable life. Beautiful life, predictable. But tshuva is radical. Yesterday he did this, and today, no longer. He tears himself away. And he changes and breaks the rules. So that Pesach Sheni is one day, it's not less, it's more. One day, in the sense that it's beyond the predictable progression and seder of time. Therefore, it's one day. It means less, not more. And that's why also you can have chometz. Because the tzaddik, which is a Pesach Sheni, Pesach Rishon, the first Pesach, what does chometz represent? The ego, the Yitzhahara. He's got nothing to do with that. He's renounced it, and the tzaddik is progressing in the world of holiness. The Baal Tshuva is even greater, because he takes that Yitzhahara, he takes that Mishigas, and what does he do now? He's channeling it and using it in Kedusha. It's transformation. It's a higher level. The tzaddik has nothing to do with the world. But the Baal Tshuva did in a very unholy way. And he's part of the world. He's not becoming a tzaddik. But he's going to take all of that and all of those resources, and he's using it now in the service of Hashem. He has the chometz together with him. Higher level than the first Pesach. That is the power of Teshuvah. And the power of a Yid. And Torah itself is now expanded. There would have been 612 mitzvahs. Because these people came along, so 613. Torah expands the whole borders of Yiddishkeit. And what's the message? The message is a gewalt, a Yid in a moment. In a moment. It can happen in a moment also, just in one moment. Enough. He's a new direction in his life, and he's taking all of everything in his life he has till now, and he's channeling it now in the service of Hashem. This can happen in a moment. This is Pesach Sheni, and this is even higher than the first Pesach, which is why the place, right, we all know where the Baal Tshuva stands, even the perfect tzaddik cannot stand. That's what happens in the second month, Chodesh Hasheni, because it's a whole new avodah. It's not the same as the first month. The first month belongs to, that's the tzaddikim. This is the second month, second implying a different and a higher level of avodah, and that is the avodah of teshuvah. And the paradox is that that's applicable to everyone, no matter what. It's possible with this radical and powerful transformation of the whole past, bringing it all into a whole new connection, and that therein lies the ultimate nachas. David was waiting for this to happen. He said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I was hoping this is going to happen. I want to always give this mitzvah, but people have to demand and ask for it. And so they asked for it because Hashem's Torah was already before. But how was it revealed? It was Dafka and Yidden became banging on heaven's door. Okay, my friends, have a wonderful day. And in Mitzvah Hashem, next Thursday again, we're still here in this situation for the next 2 weeks. Now that we can
Shabbos,
quarantine.
Rabbi.
Yeah, and then in Melbourne. Good Shabbos.
Yeshua Koyach. Thank you.